Now, you may think that this video coming out so late is just me procrastinating, but as soon as rumors of a September Direct started, I figured it was probably a very good idea to wait until that Direct in case we got an announcement of the first DLC hero, just in case they did something that would completely invalidate this video 2 days later. This will contain spoilers for the entire main story of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. As of the September 2022 Nintendo Direct, we now have information on Ino, the first DLC hero for Xenoblade 3, as well as the silhouette for the second one. The description of the game's expansion pass states that there will only be 2 new heroes, but that does not necessarily mean that those are going to be the only new heroes we will get throughout the lifetime of the game, and that's not even counting whatever the party format and the expansion story is going to be. The same update that introduces Ino will also include the first bit of the challenge battle mode for Xenoblade 3, and in 2, you could actually unlock and recruit cameo characters from previous Xenoblade games through the challenge mode, but I'm not even talking about that. I think that if these characters are ever actually added into the game as heroes, they will be in a free update, because Xenoblade 2 did that as well. If you're new enough to the series where you either have never played Xenoblade 2, or did not get it until after its DLC pass had finished coming out, then you might not know the massive amount of things that were actually added to the game for free over its update history, because while 3 is definitely missing a lot of things, 2 was missing a lot more at launch, which is why I'm very confident that 3 is going to get a lot of big improvements over time. 2's equivalent to heroes are rare blades, and the expansion pass included 6, 3 of which you could gain normally by doing side quests, and 3 that were locked behind challenge mode. Do keep in mind, the amount of content related to a single hero in 3 is a lot more than the amount to a single rare blade in 2, and due to the differences in the battle systems between the 2 games, creating a new hero in 3 also requires you to create an entirely new weapon type with animations for the 6 main characters, while in 2, only the new rare blade needed to be completely animated, while the 4 drivers that could use that blade were just reusing animations present in the base game. 2 might have given you a bunch of rare blades if you paid for the DLC, but over the course of its update history, it also added a bunch of blades for free. Some of these were probably catching up on things that weren't ready for launch because the game actually didn't have New Game Plus until 3 months after it came out, but in the update where you got New Game Plus, you also were given access to 7 new rare blades, only accessible in a New Game Plus save file, and in the following major update, 1 more free rare blade was also given to players, only accessible on a cleared save file as opposed to specifically New Game Plus. That last bit is the important part though, because we already have equivalents to that in Xenoblade 3, with the 2 queens being accessible as heroes in a file that has the clear icon on it. So, since 2 gave you more free bonus rare blades than DLC bonus rare blades, and even including the fact that we already have 2 bonus heroes in 3, there are at least going to be 2 DLC heroes in 3, so I don't think it would be unreasonable to expect a couple more heroes in free updates down the line, especially if they are also locked to a clear game or New Game Plus. The best part about this all is, I'm not just making things up and speculating. There are bits of unused heroes in the game's files that have been datamined. And none of those are DLC characters. In Xenoblade 2, people knew about upcoming DLC characters and even the party members for the DLC expansion story way ahead of time because they were present in the game's files. But in 3's case, nobody's found anything about Ino yet, but there are 3 potential other heroes. And none of them are going to be the second DLC hero either, because they're all characters that exist in the main game already, which was the exact premise for all of the New Game Plus exclusive rare blades in Xenoblade 2. So then, who are these mysterious characters? The first thing I should show you is this list of weapon icons that includes every single weapon type you're able to use in the game, as well as 3 additional ones. The very interesting thing about this is we can actually tell where in the hero order these 3 additional characters would be, because the ordering of weapons in this list is actually the exact same order as the default sorting method for the hero list in-game, and that actually reveals a few other things about development, because obviously it starts with the 6 main characters, but you can tell that the importance or requiredness of various heroes has been shuffled around, because after the 6 main characters are Ethel, then the Napon, which makes sense because they're both required, then Izzard, Miyabi, Kamaravi, and Monica. And out of those, only Miyabi's class you are actually forced to pick up, then one unused weapon, then the 2 queens, and only then do you get Valdi, who is required. Then after Valdi is Xeon, Teach, and Alexandria, all optional characters, and then Juniper, who is also required. Also, Gondor, who's required, is right near the end, and Gray is the only used weapon icon after her, which is very interesting just to show how things definitely changed during the process of development. But obviously the stuff you came here to see are the 3 unused icons. The first one I already mentioned is the club-looking weapon, which is the first thing on the 3rd line in between Monica and Nia, and then the other 2 are all the way at the end of the list on the bottom line after Gray. The first is a rapier-looking sword with flowers on it that honestly sort of looks like it could be a beta version of Nia's weapon icon, and then the last one is a gun that looks a lot like Valdi's, and while I say this is unused, that is not technically true, as this is Mwamba's weapon icon. Now, if you watched the North American version of the Ino reveal trailer, you might have also seen that weapon icon there. However, in that case, it is definitely a placeholder, as her actual icon can be seen in a post on the official Japanese Xenoblade Twitter account, and it's a sword, not a gun whatsoever. And if you look closely, you can actually see Ino's name in katakana on top of the weapon icon, which is a practice Monolith has used elsewhere in Xenoblade 3 and also in Definitive Edition and 2, where if they don't have a specific asset done for a certain character, they will just use a generic one and then include that character's name to indicate that's who it's for. So obviously the first thing I'm getting at is that Mwamba is very, very likely to be added as a hero, or a permanent hero at least, in a future update. And the very interesting thing about this is, out of all of the 3 characters, he is the one with the most assets already completed, because if you go to another image of all the weapon icons, one that includes the roll color for the weapon, you could see that the other 2 unused weapons are just not present at all, while there is a Mwamba icon in proper attacker red. In addition to that, Mwamba also has an unused chain attack icon, which at the very least suggests that you might have unlocked chain attacks way earlier than you do in the final game, if not him being a usable hero in the future, and people have even been able to figure out what his chain attack abilities are. His chain action, I believe, just grants additional TP to every other active character, and his chain order reactivates an additional character with a chance to reactivate more, so nothing super interesting, but still in the game already, that's a big deal. So what do I think about the feasibility of Mwamba being added, and how would they implement him into the game? Well, personally, I think that if we only get one hero for free, it is going to be Mwamba, because basically he's already in the game as a hero. They just don't call him that because you get him in Chapter 1 before you learn about the hero system. And while I'm sure the majority of the work implementing a new hero is in the class the other 6 party members can get, him as a 7th seems to be almost completely done. The only things I can see are glaringly missing are the stats for his upgrade to rank 20, and possibly a few dialogue options where he interacts with the Agnes characters. As for how to unlock him, he's the only one that could be reasonably considered canon, and not locked to New Game Plus because, well, he's in the exact same situation as Kamaravi. He shows up again having been brought back to life and artificially aged to a 10th termer by Y, and you free him at the same time and bring him back to the city at the same time. So really, they could just add a secondary quest or one chaining off of the one that brings Kamaravi to the city and unlocks him, where you can also get Mwamba back. Theoretically, you could also get Hacked as well, because he was the 4th for the Agnes team and also died at the same time and was also brought back at the same age at the same time. However, Hacked is not one of the other 2 characters with evidence that have been data mined, and he uses a much more generic model and generic weapon compared to Mwamba, so while it would be cool to get him and actually learn anything about him as a character, and he also seems to be a tank which is in short supply currently, he does not seem nearly as likely as the 3 characters I'm talking about in this video. It is worth noting that the New Game Plus rare blades in Xenoblade 2 had a lot less content associated with them than all of the other ones. They lacked that game's equivalent of Ascension quests, and only came with a couple conversations that were voiced, thankfully. So even if we do get Mwamba, he might not be as in-depth as any other hero in the game, as in you might get him straight up at rank 20, and he might not have any voiced stuff besides just his unlock or maybe a small scene for his ascension, and while he probably would get a couple side quests, it might just be a couple normal generic side quests with no new voice acting. temper your expectations, we might not even get him at all. As for characters we're even less likely to get than Mwamba, we have to move to a different section of Datamine material. While you might be able to guess at one of the characters from the unused weapon icons, we actually need to go into the chain attack portrait section. As I mentioned that Mwamba already has an unused one, and lo and behold, there are portraits for the other two characters as well. The chain attack portraits are in the exact same order as the weapon icons and default hero listing I mentioned before, with a couple exceptions. Instead of jumping from Senna straight to Ethel, there are 6 additional slots taken up by the main character's Ouroboros orders, and then at the end of the list after Mwamba, we get Mio and Mio Ouroboros with her long hair, and then Monica with her eye patch. Once again, the most interesting part is the unused icons, because while I said that Mwamba had a complete one, the other two are incomplete, instead just using a blacked out silhouette of Noah's icon. However, remember what I said, with Monolith liking to use a generic icon and then putting a character's name on it? Both of those blacked out Noah icons say dummy, and then a character's name in Japanese. The first one, in between Monica and Nia, is Yorin, and the second one, in between Gray and Mwamba, says Nami. And while I think it would be hilarious if Xenoblade 3 got a crossover with One Piece Odyssey instead of Tears of the Kingdom, like Xenoblade 2 did with Breath of the Wild, it's a lot simpler than that. Nami is just Nimue's Japanese name. If you remember the two weapon icons associated with these portraits, the first one makes perfect sense. It's just Yorin's club wand thing he used as a regular Kavesi soldier before he became Mobius. Nimue's, on the other hand, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. On closer inspection, you can obviously see that it is not a beta version of Nia's weapon icon because it is a straight-bladed sword, while in Xenoblade 2, Nia's was specifically referred to as a scimitar, which is a type of curved sword, and the flowers are completely different. The flowers on Nia's weapon, both in 2 and 3, appear to be based on the Jacob's Ladder, which is mentioned in the lyrics of the song Drifting Soul from 2, which has multiple remixes and was basically turned into Nia's theme in 3. Nimue's sword, on the other hand, appears to have flowers on it that are based on Sophronia blossoms, which are effectively the Xenoblade universe version of cherry blossoms, and can be found in abundance in the Lost Colony, where Nimue is from. The only issue with that is, we know what Nimue's blade weapon type was, and it was not a sword of any sort. Both the dead incarnation of Nimue from Taion's backstory, and the young incarnation of Nimue from Taion's side story are stated to use the same Mondo weapon he does, even if neither is shown to fight. So to avoid redundancy, they'd have to have her do something completely different with her Mondo, but I don't know if turning them into a sword is a thing they're supposed to be able to do. So at the very least, they need to do a little bit of messing around in order to make her as an actual hero and as a second Mondo class, but at the very least, they didn't show her fight at all, so there is a lot more wiggle room. Pre-Mobius Yorin was shown to be a very talented healer, so he would obviously be a Kavesi healer, and Nimue would be Agnian, but I'm unsure what role she would be because, again, we have never seen her fight, and her weapon icon suggests a different weapon type than she's known to have used, so just because Taion is a healer using Mondo doesn't mean Nimue will also be another Agnes healer. As for implementing these characters into the game, you're going to have to go purely non-canon probably for both of them. Yorin obviously dies during the main story and is trying to kill you up until then, so making him locked behind New Game Plus and just having him around in Colony 9 or something so you can unlock him there, or having him show up as an NPC in the Cloud Keep after that fight where he somehow has survived and then chooses to turn face, either having lost his Mobius powers because Zed took them away, or choosing not to use them, joining the party as a healer then, or even saying he was reborn from a cradle in Keves Castle and making you able to meet him in a post-game or New Game Plus save there in the plaza after having killed him in Cloud Keep. All of that stuff would work. As for Nimue, there are a few options, but I'm almost certain that the hero version of her, if she's added to the game, will be in her older model and not her younger one, as the older model is a completely unique one, while the younger one appears to be her adult head shrunk down and put on a modified generic Agnian child model. They could just kind of go completely ridiculous and have her available in some non-canon way, however way you want to do it, and then still have the small Nimue available in the Lost Colony to talk to, and you could bring Big Nimue to talk to small Nimue. That's not completely out of the realm of possibility, because you could literally use a certain character as a rare blade to fight that same character in Xenoblade 2 New Game Plus. So I don't think they'd care too much about New Game Plus canon to go out of their way to avoid doing that, especially since if you had Yorin as a hero and then did a New Game Plus after that file, you'd theoretically be able to fight every single console J fight with Yorin as your hero as well, so that's also a thing. But I also think it would be possible, if they really wanted to just use the Colony Omega Cradle you can already use on Ethel if you've done Kamaravi's side quest already, and take the young Nimue from the Lost Colony, stick her in there, and then she pops out as a 10th termer willing to fight alongside you. I think that's kinda weird and doesn't necessarily fit her character or the entire point of Taiyan's side story, but if they really wanted to do that, they could. Personally, I think it would be better to have 2 Nimues, because I think Big Nimue talking to Small Nimue would be very cute and very funny, but if they really wanted to only have 1, they could. Either way, I hope we do get Nimue as a hero, because, well, Yorin actually gets development and is fleshed out pretty much completely as character. We really don't see a lot of Nimue, even including Taiyan's side story, so I would like to see more of her, especially if these theoretical free update heroes get a bit more content than the New Game Plus blades in Xenoblade 2 did. Release Nimue's thighs. You know you want to do it, Monolith. And yeah, that's all I've got. Don't really have a good way to end this. I think it's very interesting that despite Ino being added in 1.2, she is nowhere to be found in 1.1, and 3 other heroes who are not her are also in the data. I don't particularly think it's likely we'll get any of these characters in the same update as Ino, but I think in the future there is a chance that we are going to get at least Mwamba. I think it's very likely that there's going to be at least one major update, so a 1.x.0 update that does not contain any pieces of the DLC, because Xenoblade 2 had one of those as well. So if any of those happens, that's probably going to be when we get any or all of these heroes. I wanted to make this video first before talking about my ideas about the story DLC, just because I wanted to have more stuff to back up my opinion that the image of the 3 swords together specifically is supposed to be associated with the story DLC and not the expansion pass as a whole, despite it being the key art for it. And I think the fact that not only the DLC heroes not being cameo characters, and challenge mode not being advertised alongside cameo characters this time, but potential additional heroes in the game's data being Xenoblade 3 original characters and not cameo characters goes along with the point I want to make. But also, I think it's very important for anyone who's interested in the continuing updates of this game to know, so it was worth making a video either way. Till next time, this is Luxon, signing off.